The battle lines for Nigeria's 2027 presidential election are already beginning to take shape, and one of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's potential challengers has delivered a harsh assessment of his administration performance. African Action Congress presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore has called the Tinubu government an F9 across all major areas of governance, arguing that the administration has failed to deliver meaningful progress in security, power, education, healthcare, food security, and the economy. Sowore, who is preparing to contest the 2027 presidential election under the platform of the African Action Congress, made a statement during an appearance on Channels Television's The Morning Brief, where he reviewed what he described as the achievements and failures of President Tinubu's 3 years in office. His comments have immediately sparked political debates, with supporters and critics of the administration expected to interpret his remarks from different perspectives.
I rate the government from a number of parameters, and one of it is security. You know where we are failed. We're talking about the power sector. The national grid has collapsed more than anything else in this country in the last 3 years. We're talking about education. We are now asking our children to borrow to go to school. We're talking about healthcare. Even the president doesn't go to Nigerian hospitals. We're talking about food security. Nigeria is on the list of countries that is regarded as hungry, to the point that the FAO, I think it's the body that's in charge of agriculture and food, the Food and Agriculture Organization. So FAO. Yes, considers Nigeria as one of the places you have to send food to in 2026 to feed its people. We're talking about the economy. We have grown the number of poor people from 70 million about 3 years ago to 140. Oh, that doesn't look good. We are talking about multidimensionally poor people. So you tell me, if you look at all these parameters, where I could fit even a good comment, where I can even grade them F. I can't find it. As I usually say, being a former professor or teacher, professors what they call teachers in the US, university teachers, I would just ask the administration to be. That would have. But if Tinubu were to be in my class, I just ask him to go and find another school.
While opposition figures have continued to criticize the government's policies, officials of the Tinubu administration have repeatedly defended their reforms, arguing that difficult decisions are necessary to rebuild Nigeria's economic and address long-standing challenges. But why has Sowore given the Tinubu administration such a low rating? And what issues is he highlighting as evidence of what he described as government failure? During the interview, Sowore was asked to identify any positive achievements of the Tinubu administration since taking office. However, the AHC presidential candidate said he could not point to any area where he believed the government deserved a positive assessment. He explained that his evaluation was based on several key areas, including security, electricity, education, healthcare, food security, and the economy. According to Sowore, the government has performed poorly in each of these sectors, leading him to conclude that the administration deserves the lowest possible grade. On security, Sowore argued that Nigeria remains deeply challenged by insecurity, with communities across different parts of the country continue to experience attacks, kidnappings, and violence. He said that despite promises by successive governments to improve security, many Nigerians still do not feel safe. And he described the situation as one of the major failures of the current administration. The AHC candidates also criticized the power sector, claiming that the national electricity grid has experienced repeated failures under the Tinubu administration. Electricity remains one of Nigeria's biggest development challenges, with businesses and households relying heavily on alternative sources of power. Sowore argued that the situation has worsened rather than improved, making the power sector another reason for his negative assessments. Education was another area highlighted by the opposition figure. He criticized the increasing financial pressure on Nigerian students and families, arguing that many young people are struggling to access quality education because of rising costs. He also questioned the state of healthcare in the country, pointing to the continued dependence on foreign medical treatments by some political leaders as evidence of weaknesses within Nigeria's healthcare system. Sowore further raised concerns about food security, saying that Nigeria is facing serious challenges in ensuring that citizens have access to affordable and sufficient food. He argued that rising food prices and economic difficulties have placed millions of Nigerians under pressure, with many households struggling to meet their basic needs. On the economy, Sowore claimed that poverty levels have increased significantly under the current administration. He argued that economic policies introduced by the government have made life more difficult for ordinary Nigerians. He specifically criticized the impact of economic reforms, including policies that have affected the cost of living, saying that millions of citizens are experiencing increased hardship. Based on these factors, Sowore said he could not even give the government an average grade, insisting that his assessment remained an F9 across all parameters. Using his background as a former university lecturer, Sowore compared the government's performance to that of a student failing multiple subjects. He said that if President Tinubu were his student, he would advise him to leave the classroom and seek another opportunity to improve. However, Sowore clarified that his statement was not the same as caused by some opposition figures for President Tinubu to retire from politics, when the presenter suggested that his remarks were similar to comments by Labour Party leader Peter Obi, who had previously urged Tinubu to step aside. Sowore rejected that comparison. He explained that he was not asking the president to retire, but rather using the classroom analogy to express his belief that the administration had performed poorly. The comments come as political activities ahead of the 2027 presidential election begin to intensify. President Tinubu, who won the 2023 election on the platform of the APC, is expected to seek another term in office, while opposition parties are preparing their strategies to challenge the ruling party. Sowore, who also contested the 2019 and 2023 presidential elections, is positioning himself as one of the voices seeking an alternative political direction for Nigeria. However, supporters of the Tinubu administration are likely to argue that Sowore's assessment ignores some of the government's stated achievements, including economic reforms, infrastructure projects, and policy changes aimed at attracting investments and improving government efficiency. The administration has maintained that many of the challenges facing Nigerians are the result of decades of structural problems and that reforms require time before their benefits become fully visible. As the 2027 election approaches, the debate over President Tinubu's record will likely become one of the central issues shaping political campaigns. Opposition figures such as Sowore are expected to continue highlighting economic hardship, insecurity, and governance concerns, while the ruling party will focus on defending its policies and presenting its achievements. Sowore's F9 verdict has added another layer to the growing political contest ahead of 2027, creating a fresh debate over whether the Tinubu administration reforms represent necessary change or evidence of poor governance. The final judgment, however, will not come from political opponents alone. It will ultimately be decided by Nigerian voters when they make their choice at the ballot box in 2027. For more news reports, stay with us on First Next News. I'm Chidera Esom. Thanks for watching. Do have a beautiful day.